Hello and welcome to Arise News. I'm Charles Anyegolu in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, and this is an Arise News special. Now, he's bold, he's certainly eccentric, he's brash, he's courageous, he's daring, and he doesn't hesitate to bend the rules beyond the usual limits of conventional thought and action. He's also flashy, he's showy, and he's strikingly conspicuous, and he rather likes to take on the powers that be. He was born Charles Chukwuemeka Oputa, and he's without a doubt one of Nigeria's most popular and controversial public figures, who's known for his alternative lifestyle and strong political views. More recently, he's been the president of the Performing Musicians Association of Nigeria and a judge on the African version of the Pop Idol series. By the way, he's also the son of one of Nigeria's most respected Supreme Court justices. Entertainment journalists call him Nigeria's Boy George, but his legion of fans call him quite simply Charlyboy. Charlyboy, thank you very much indeed. You didn't like that part about Boy George,
No,
did you?
no, I
didn't. Well, you have been called Boy George because at one point,
yeah, that's from the Boondocks. That's
why we're looking
40
at you.
years ago.
We're looking at you in historical context, how you've evolved over the years.
But you failed to add the most important title.
And what is that?
The president of all frustrated Nigeria.
We're going to get to that part, I assure you. But let's start with the family you were born into. Your father was a respected lawyer, a judge, and then a Supreme Court justice, arguably one of the most respected justices in this country, presiding over some of the biggest historical events, legal events that this country passed through. But he was also a strict disciplinarian, wasn't he?
Tell me about that.
Well, I'm hoping you'll tell me about that.
Yeah, well, in the beginning, it was such a hullabaloo, such a struggle, okay? Because, yes, I was a big rascal. I rebelled against everything. You know, I didn't quite understand why my father had wanted me to keep certain company. And that was a company of, you know, his friends' children. And I wanted to run around and play with the people on the street. And somewhere down the line, something happened to me. Because I must say, I'm a privileged child. Thank God for that. Yeah? I had a lot of toys. I was very, very playful. On a certain day, I had gone to visit one of my friends, and I found out that there were 5 in a room. I'm used to having my own room, a room full of toys. And here I was visiting this friend, and there were 5 in a room. And there was the absence of toys.
And that bothered you, did it?
And that, it did bother me. And from then onwards, I started to give away my toys. In fact, a year after or thereabout, I had no toys because I was just giving it away. And each time I brought my friend to the house, my father would say, "Who is that?" I said, "I really don't know." "Who is their father?" "I don't know." "How come you're bringing people into the house like that?" For me, these were fun people.
So in other words, your father wanted you to mix with an elite group of people.
Yes.
And you wanted to just mix with ordinary people.
Yes. That's how this whole thing about the poor, the less privileged, that's how it all started.
And it's all you've carried out through your carried that through your
through
life,
my
basically.
life. Yeah.
So how did you perform at school? I mean, did you do your homework and all
I
of
was
that?
not an
Or
exceptional
were you
student.
were you a bit of a tearaway?
I was not an exceptional student like that, Charles. You know, because I was too playful.
And of course, your father was absolutely brilliant at school. So
yeah, he was, and he was all the time. He
that
kept
would have raised his hackles.
Yeah, he almost had a fit. You know, that I wasn't getting the good grades like he expected, and then of course when I finished my high school, he didn't say that much, but I knew he wanted me to, you know, do law. And I was going to have my way.
And that's the last thing you wanted to do.
That was the last thing on my mind, you know. And so when I now came back, after my surgery in the U.S., and I came back, I think that was about 79. And I started to build a brand, Charlyboy.
Right, and what were you doing in the United States?
I went to school. I went to Emerson College. I graduated as a mass comm major, as a journalist. You know, I got my master's in journalism, and I only spent 5-6 years in America. I never really liked America because of, you know, at the place I stayed in America was Boston, and there was
quite
a lot
cold,
of
right,
yeah. Not only is it cold, it had a lot of racial tension at the time I was there. I don't want to get into the story.
Right.
It was a nasty one. So I never really liked America. So I came back. I came back a year after I did my youth service. I now started to build a brand, Charlyboy. And then the old man was just made a Supreme Court judge. He was transferred to Lagos. Guess where I started to build my career? In the village, Charles.
Right. Well, what I was going to ask you before we get to that very interesting part was, I mean, when did you really start to know that you wanted to be different? Was that when you were in school?
I've always wanted to be different.
So
ever since I can remember, I always wanted to be different. You know, when I was even my teen years, when people were wearing baggy pants, they called it
bell-bottom trousers.
Bell-bottom at the time. I wanted very narrow skin.
You wanted
tight
drain
tabs.
pipes, basically.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they were called.
So, you know, I'd always been on the far left.
So when did you then start to dress, pardon the expression, outrageously? Because, I mean, was that in school?
My father actually thought I was... No, that was really... After I'd finished the youth corps thing,
right.
I'd come back to Nigeria. I was trying to build the brand, yeah.
Were you still living in your father's house at the time?
Hell no, because that was when I had to disown my father.
Right.
Because I just couldn't take the yabbing. I know that parents are very concerned about their children. They want them to do well. They want to be financially secured and all of that. And quite simply, my father didn't think that my choice of career was going to make me that secure.
And your choice of career was music at the time?
Was music at the time, to just be a freak and, you know, express myself, live my life, do whatever
You wanted
I
to
choose
be a
to
professional?
do.
Doctor,
Of course,
lawyer,
of course.
engineer, that sort of
How
thing.
boring, Charles.
And then you started dressing up differently. Were you trying to say to people, look at me? Was that a way of attracting attention?
I was trying to shock timid, myopic, Mongo-packish, last-year Nigerians out of their bloody mind.
Was that also aimed at your father? In other words, let's try and get him as riled up as possible.
You're bad. Yes.
Well, I mean,
yes.
Curious.
Yes, a little bit of that.
Right.
A little bit of that. I'll teach you a lesson. No, we all don't got to be lawyers and doctors and stuff like that. You could still be successful following, charting your own path and discovering your own self,
And of
which
course,
is what I did.
You ultimately proved that, didn't you? But slowly, you became more of a celebrity, and your father would pick up a newspaper, and there you would be. I mean, you clearly were not at home at that time. You weren't living at home then.
As soon as I came back from America, I wasn't living with my father, period.
Right.
I cut off. You didn't hear me when I said I disowned
No,
him.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
did you? I mean, did you have something of an identity crisis? Because as a growing man, your father's image loomed large over you, didn't it? You'd find a lot of people constantly comparing you to your father.
Oh yes.
I mean, how did you reconcile the two?
Yeah. At that time, I hated to be introduced as Charles Oputa, the son of so. That was like, I got to get my own identity.
Is that why you started calling yourself Charlyboy?
Precise.
Right.
That's how come I knew I got to build an identity, have a brand that is unique, and I went for the wild and the crazy.
And when you conjured up that image, because you went from, I mean, you wore dreadlocks, you had a mohawk, you had all of that.
I started wearing, I that's how the gay thing started.
Right, the impression that you were gay.
I was
right.
gay, yeah.
Which is where the Boy George comparison came
yes,
about.
I started doing the lipstick.
Right.
I had a more or
You
less
were-
like a sissy look.
Well, I mean, you were, let's face it, you were a cross-dresser. But that is true. I mean, you
yeah,
dressed,
I admit.
you dressed in women's clothes. You
No,
put
no,
on,
no,
you put
not
on
in
lipsticks,
not in
lipstick
women's
and,
clothes,
you know,
Charles.
cosmetics and all
Not
of
in
that.
women's clothes,
Right.
but yes, I had the makeup, the facial stuff,
Right.
even the attitude.
And you were also a motorbike freak, weren't you? You rode huge
I was just
motorbikes.
simply a freak, Charles.
I mean, a lot of people thought you were just a spoilt kid. I mean,
Yeah.
you had all the privilege.
I was just having fun with my life.
Right, okay, let's hold that thought there, Charlyboy. Time for a short break now, but do stay with us when we come back. Talking more to Charlyboy about that period in his life when he sprouted dreadlocks, a mohawk, and adopted a goth image. Stay with us.
Wow.
Like everyone else.
Never. I knew there was something special about me. I knew that I stood out. I knew that the quickest and the fastest way to get this recognition and be popular and be famous, which has always been my dream, was to do something wildly crazy.
So you wanted to be outrageous, basically.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So that is what the Charlyboy image has been about. To shock, like I said, to shock timid, myopic, Mongo-Packish Nigeria out of their way of thinking, because we do live in a very conservative environment.
It's a fairly conservative country.
I remember my father always saying to me, this ain't going to work here. Do you know where you are? This is not America. This is not going to work.